Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Zoom at 8. My name is Julianne Peterson, and I'm with Old Capital Lending. And we are here every Tuesday night. Every Tuesday night, we get together. We have a speaker, and we have networking. So I thank all of you who make it a priority for Tuesday night. You know, there's 6 other nights that you can make going off with your family. So Tuesday night, it's here. I do want to get off to a great start to listening to Jamil Sayegh, who is here. And he's special to me because I've spent 6 months with him. I was introduced to him by Angel Renee through one of her summits. And it was on a Saturday. I was sitting in my kitchen, and I try not to work on Saturdays, but I tuned in and I was listening to him, and what he was saying was touching my heart. And it was really creating some space for me that says, hey, maybe you should take a look and listen to what he has to say. You know, like all of us, we have things that we want to improve, and whether it's personal or it's in our business life, I knew that I had some things that were kind of scratching at the surface that I wanted to get to. And I picked up the phone and I called him, and we just had an amazing experience. I had an amazing experience with Jamil. And so I wanted to introduce you to him. You know, he has been on other people's meetups, and they maybe not had the experience that I had. So to me, this is very personal, and I want to share him. Again, he's like peanut butter. I just want to spread him around. And whether it is something that is tearing at your heart or speaking to you, his words are so meaningful, and hopefully you'll find that to be true, and maybe he'll be scratching at your heart. And if it is, reach out to him. So Jamil is an international life, business, and relationship coach, an integrative naturopathic physician, master NLP practitioner, and an author of 20 Steps to Your Next Breakthrough. He works with leaders and high performers from all walks of life, including world champion athletes, best-selling authors, entrepreneurs, business professionals, and more, to create an extraordinary life without regret. And I would tell you that that is what I got when I worked with Jamil. He has a deep passion to end suffering as for so many people as possible by reconnecting them with what's real and challenging them to live and love fully. He is a true healer at heart, who loves to motivate, empower, and inspire others to take responsibility and action in their lives so they can influence more effectively, expand their contribution, embody their greatness, and make this world a better place because they were here. So without further ado, I do want you to please give Jamil all of your attention. If you would, look up at the right-hand side, there's a view, go to speaker view. And Jamil, welcome to Zoom at 8. It is a treat to have you.
Thank you so much, Julie. Thank you for the beautiful, beautiful introduction and words. And you're such a pleasure to know. And it's awesome to find, this is my second Zoom at 8 that I've gotten to be a part of. And so definitely want to start by just thanking Julie and everybody on the Old Capital team for making these events possible. I've heard so many good things from people over the last year that I've known Julie or so. And it sounds like it's truly transformational for everyone. And so if we can just have a round of applause for Julie.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Just the first 20 minutes of this, I'm hearing everyone loves Julie. And so I agree. I'm team Julie too. And so this is wonderful.
Checks are going out in the mail tomorrow.
Yeah. And so I also want to thank everyone for taking the time to be here today. I do believe that I understand the value of time, and I don't take it lightly that you're here. There's so many things that you could be doing outside of being here. And again, I don't take that for granted. So thank you so much for being with us today. I'm going to do everything I can to bring as much value. And there's something, the part that you play as well in creating your success tonight. And I'll get to that in a moment. And I also want to just make one request of you. Most people seem like they're already doing it, but if you can and you're able to, please have your camera on. There's 2 primary reasons for this. I have a new camera that's up here, so you can't even see
Yeah.
my hand. But I have two primary reasons for this. Number one, you will get more out of this if you make your presence known. If you're seen and people, you kind of speak yourself into the room with your presence, you will get more out of this. And number two, it's a lot more fun and engaging for all of us to see your beautiful face versus to have just a photo or just a name with a black background. And so if you can, and you're not on camera, please join us. And so I'm going to share my screen. And if I can just get a thumbs up if you see this. Wonderful, wonderful. All right, so today's presentation, as you see here, it's creating lasting change, the 5 keys to unlocking your greatness. And so some of you I've recognized by different events that I've gotten the pleasure of speaking at, and some of you I don't know yet. And so for those of you who don't know me, without rehashing the kind of bio that Julie read, I've been blessed for years to work with leaders and high performers from various walks of life, many in the real estate space, whether they be loan officers, real estate agents, real estate brokers, and real estate investors as their life coach, their business coach, and their relationship coach. And what I do is I spend time with you and I find out what your problems are, what your challenges are, and then we dive deep in conversation. And I help you see your world differently. And I help you show up as a more powerful, competent, capable version of you. And once you do that, your whole world changes. It's like the rising tide, lifts all boats, and each of the boat metaphorically represents an area of your life, your health, your business, your relationships, etc. And as the tide goes up, everything gets better because you are getting better. And that's the work that I've been really fortunate and blessed to do. That is what's on my heart today to share with you. All of these people that I work with, these leaders and high performers, first and foremost, I want you to understand that they chose to be leaders and high performers. That's the first thing they have in common. And what I mean by that is so many people think that it's something that you're either born with or you're not, when in reality, it's a choice. I define a leader as somebody whose their thought process, it's more about we than about me. They want to make a positive impact and a positive difference on not only themselves, but their family, their company, their community, and depending on the size of their vision, their country or the world. So it's not just about them. And when I think about a high performer, I think about somebody who wants to do and be the best they can at the things that matter most to them. They want to perform at the highest levels they're capable of. Those are the people that I have found the most fun to work with. And those are the people in this world who typically get the results that they want to as quickly and as efficiently as predictably as possible. Today I'm going to share with you some strategies, tools, and ways of being that I share with my clients in order to create lasting change. And what Julie mentioned, to create an extraordinary life without regret. And the story behind that will make sense by the end of today. So I'm going to do my best, as I said, to share everything I can with you in our time together. And I do ask you to write down any questions that you might have throughout the presentation. We'll take them at the end. If you want to put them in the chat so you don't forget them, you can do that. If you want to write it down, you can do that too. And we will answer it at the end again. And so, a little background of why I'm here today. The purpose of today, number one, is I'd love to give you a powerful experience of the heart and soul of what I do with the leaders and high performers that I coach. Number two is I'm here to provide massive value to you. I want to have fun with you all. And there's no reason why Tuesday night we can't have a party, and make this a great experience for everyone. And ultimately, there is no sales pitch here. I'm sure we've all been, I know I have, but I'm sure we've all been on an event, whether it's in person or virtual, and for an hour, for 40 minutes, whatever the time frame is, you feel like you're just getting something thrown in your face, and you feel like someone's just trying to sell you something. And that's not the intention for today. Again, the intention is to really blow you away with value and have you leave here thinking, I know exactly what I need to do. And at the same time, there's still an opportunity here for you. I'm going to do what I can to provide that value. And at the end, if you feel you resonate with me and you'd like to have a conversation, I'd love to speak with you. And that's pretty much what is on offer for today. And so I'm going to put a link in the chat just in case anyone has to leave early. And this is just how you can reach me. And I'll also put that in again at the end. And so as we dive into today, this is what we're going to cover today. I said the 5 keys to unlock your greatness. Number 1, the power of the stories that you create, believe, and live into, as well as how to create new stories and an identity that empowers and serves you towards creating your goals and dreams. Number 2 is the magic formula for creating anything that you want. Number 3 is how to overcome the 2 biggest fears that hold human beings back. Number 4 is the secret to reality creation and the nature of the human experience. And number 5 is the wake-up call that you didn't know you needed. And so, as we dive into today, and so as we start here, I have here the power of story. once time. Now, I want you to consider that stories hold immense power, the power to create and the power to destroy and everything in between. Yeah, it says it in the Bible, the power of life and death is in the tongue. Stories of our favorite sport teams overcoming the odds and shining with excellence creates so much excitement in us. Stories of what could have been creates regret and maybe some sadness. And stories in history rather, that we can review and look at and go, wow, based on what's happened before, I'm going to do this going forward. It's clear that stories are powerful, and that's part of the human experience. Stories has been what's passed down throughout the generations. And some stories are so powerful, they directly influence our behavior and how we see the world. Are two superstar friends of mine when I was a kid, Santa Claus and the Tooth Fairy. And so please raise your hand if at some point in your life you deeply believed in either of these superstars. And keep your hand raised, please. And there we go, let me see. All right, so we've got some wonderful believers. Thank you. You can put your hands down. And I want you to notice that you didn't just believe in them in the same way that you believe the weatherman when he says it's going to rain tomorrow. You knew with every fiber of your being that they're real, that they exist. Santa's workshops in the North Pole, reindeers fly, and you put a tooth under the pillow. It's just what you do. Like, you knew that that's how it worked. So let me ask, Matthew, if you could take yourself off of mute. Were you, I didn't know, were you one of the people?
Say again? You're breaking up.
Were you a believer at some point?
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. So I want you to imagine
both.
Yeah, both. Perfect. Even better. I want you to imagine back in the day at the height of belief that a friend of yours came up to you and started to question their existence. And you had total belief that they were real. What would you say to your friend?
Oh, my older siblings did that to me. I was like, absolutely no, I know Santa's real. You argued with them. Yeah, absolutely. Perfect. Thank you, man. And notice that you would respond with certainty. You would come, what the hell are you talking about? Of course, I saw him at the mall last week. Like, you would know in your heart that he is real. And these are stories that you tell yourself and believe about other people. So then the question becomes, what story do you tell about yourself? Are you like Muhammad Ali declaring, I am the greatest, required every single day to get better in each area of your life? Or are you like the cowardly lion from The Wizard of Oz, who despite being a lion, he acts like a mouse? He believes he's so much less than what he really is. Look at both of these pictures and just take an honest assessment. Which one am I leaning more towards? Maybe most of the time, not all the time. There's probably moments where you're in each of them. But everyone here is and there's times in your life where you act like a mouse. There's times in your life where you don't show up as powerfully as you could. So what are you speaking into existence? Your language, I often tell your language is generative. How you speak about yourself becomes how you show up in the world. So when you look at these two pictures on the left, do you see and believe who you could be? That's me. Like, you look at that little cat on the left, he sees the lion, or she sees the lion that they could be. And the version on the right doubts the greatness, and they make themselves small. And the reason why this matters so much is how you see yourself and who you believe you are will determine how much of your potential that you tap into. You can imagine if you think you're the greatest, people would tell Muhammad Ali all the time, he's like asserting it. Like, just, that's it, I'm the greatest. But when you show up from that space, what happens when you get punched in the face and you get knocked down? Well, in this example, you're not Muhammad. If you're the greatest, and the greatest gets back up. But if you see yourself as the greatest, you might. If you see yourself as poor, you won't get back up, because that's not what poor little me does. And so notice, just so far as we scratch the surface here, the identity, the story that you tell yourself matters immensely. The confidence, the boldness, all these positive characteristics and qualities that you love, they only become available to you when you see yourself as who you truly are, and not as who you've conditioned yourself to be, not who other people have told you to be up until this point. Does that make sense? Yeah. And so this leads us to the power of identity. I want you to look at this question, who am I? So as you see this question, who am I? That's the big question. And this question can be answered either in a single word, or it could be a 50-hour
webinar. Consider this question and sit with it for a moment. How do I see myself? What stories have I been telling myself that limit me? As a husband, as a wife, as a mom, as a friend, as any role that you play, stories do you tell yourself? And then what level of success have you not allowed yourself to achieve financially, relationally, in your health, and any other areas of your life? Because you might sit there and say, I don't have that thing because I'm just not that kind of person. I don't have that thing because, I'm not cut out for it. I wasn't wired that way. I wasn't born with that set of skills. And these are stories that we tell ourselves, not realizing the negative impact that it's having on our life. And so I call it the person versus the persona. The person is what and who you are. The persona is who you're pretending to be. Persona comes from mask. So I look at it as the persona is the mask that you've been wearing. It's the mask that you wear because you're asking the question, who do I need to be for you to love me? Who do I need to be accepted? Who do I need to be validated, to be normal? To guys, one of those, and we don't realize that when you're wearing the mask, when you're playing that game, even when you appear to win, you lose. Because when you're wearing the mask, even if you think people love you, if you think people like you, that's not the real you and you know it. And so because you know that something feels off, because you know that you're sitting there going, something's not right. You're looking at your career, you're looking at whatever it is you're doing. And if it's not in alignment with who you are, you feel that. And so I asked you earlier, who am I? Who are you? And for the sake of today, I'd like you to open up to the ability that you are this moment. You are pure possibility. What story do you choose to tell and live into? Because you're either committed to the story of your past, who you, I was scared in all these past situations and I ran away. And because of that, I am not courageous. So he lives his whole life acting like a sheep, acting like a mouse. Or are you committed to your success and becoming who you need to be today to get where you want to be, regardless of what's happened and who you've been up until now? And so I have an exercise I want to share with you here. We're going to take a few minutes to do it together. And I call it 3 magic words. I want you to imagine walking into a full room of people. Everyone's dressed really nice. They seem too loud. And there's a podium in front of the room. And there's a person to speak, a long line of people in the podium. And you walk in and no one seems to be noticing you. And you're wondering, what is this place? What's going on here? And you see in the front of the room to the right of the podium, casket. And you think, oh, and when you walk in, you see you in the wake, looking up in the casket, looking up at you. This is and the people that are speaking are to tell you and the world what their experience of you was like, what it was like to know you. And from that space, you're listening, going, what did I represent? What did I stand for? How did people receive me? And so my question to you is, what 3 words would you want people to use to describe you at your funeral? If you can only pick 3, and I'd like you to take 2 minutes to do that, to share with you as an example, my 3 are enthusiastic, loving, and transformational. Enthusiasm is one of my favorite words. It comes from entheos or antetheos, and it means the God within. And if I radiate that God within, if I can come from a place of love and I can truly transform and help transform people's lives, that sounds like a massively wonderful use of my time and my experience in this life. And so those are the 3 words that I wish to be remembered for. I ask you to take 2 minutes now. What 3 words would you want people to use to describe you at your funeral? And so let's take those 2 minutes now. And as you're doing it, just thinking about, who am I at my best? Who am I when I'm feeling incredible? Who am I as a parent? Who am I as a friend? Who am I as a leader? What are those qualities that I represent? What would bring tears down my eyes to know that people thought that of me? Take about 1 more minute. About 10 more seconds and we'll finish up here. Okay, I'm going to pause you here, and keeping in mind, you can always revisit this later. You can always take it away. You can add to it. You can make it more than 3 if you wanted to. But Bruce, if I could call on you, if you could unmute yourself and share, what were your 3 words?
Kind, loyal, and playful.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, man. Those are fantastic. And what were your 3 words? Alan with space in the background.
Alan. I don't think Alan's up here.
Okay, that's fine. So as everyone looks at your words, these are the questions of how can I live these words today? Ask yourself that every morning. Look at your 3 words. How could I live these more today? You know, who needs me to be more kind? Who needs me to be more loving? Who needs me to be more loyal and fun? And then think about maybe a situation, there's a difficult situation you're having. Maybe you just got into an argument with somebody. And then you would ask yourself, like almost like finish, I can buy, and you'll be surprised at what comes to you. But the key is when you live intentionally, when you're clear on how you want to show up in the world, and you're clear on every day what you want to be remembered for, and you start being it now, it guarantees that that's what you'll be remembered for. But if you just kind of hope that at the end of the day, at the end of your life, that's what people are going to remember for, but actively cultivate it, then you're really taking a chance and rolling the dice. Okay. Victim mentality versus creator mentality. I want you to think about the dichotomy here, the difference. Victims believe life happens to them. Life is at cause and they are at effect. And from this in victim mentality, from this space, whenever there's adversity, whenever there's challenge, it turns into a game of blaming and despair. There's no peace. It's coming from the space that life has it out for me. I'm under fire by life. And you'll hear things when someone's in a victim space, and you might, and we've all been in this space, myself included, of you don't understand, like this happened to me and that happened to me and she did this and he did that, and why does this keep happening to me? And again, we've all been there. I hear you if you're there now or if you've been there recently, and I respect you immensely for being here today. I'm here to let you know that there's another way. Victim mentality weakens you. Creators believe I am at cause and my life experiences are the effect. And if I don't like what I'm producing, I can change. When something happens that you see on the screen, not why me? It's, you know, bring it on. It's try me. Like I've got this. Like I can handle it. I can grow through it. Even if I get knocked down, back up even stronger. There's a beautiful metaphor of this called anti-fragile, if some of you have heard of that. And thinking of it effective that if you see a box and the box has a piece of tape over it, fragile, you want to like move that around too much. You're going to break what's inside. But the anti-fragile box is basically saying, please, I'm begging you, drop me, kick me, punt me, whatever you do to me, I will get stronger. And that isn't being anti-fragile. What would happen if you stepped into that? Breakthroughs are only possible when we stop blaming. Nothing on the outside needs to change for you to feel at peace, because that's not where your peace comes from, which will make sense in a few slides. People are responsible for their actions, and I am responsible for the results in my life and my emotional state. That's how creators see life, and that's where your power is. Adversity is necessary for growth and expansion. You know, I often tell my clients, no pressure, no diamonds. And I love this metaphor of, imagine there was a sword back in like medieval times. It's like a sword, and the blacksmith is holding the sword, and the sword could speak English. And the sword says, Master, I want to be the sharpest sword in the land. And the blacksmith knows what that will entail. But the sword doesn't. And the sword's saying, he's like, you sure you want that? And he goes, yeah, I want that more. The sword toward that sharpening wheel, that giant rock wheel that you might see in like a movie. And as it's spinning, every time you're like, and the sword's like, ow, 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 ow. The sword doesn't necessarily know why it's experiencing the pain. But the blacksmith knows that the pain that you're experiencing right now is preparing you for what you said you want to become. That you have to become more right now in order to handle the bigness of the life that you're trying to call in. And so it's something to really keep in mind. And nobody is either a victim or a creator. At the end of the day, we're creators, but from the space of the week, but my invitation is, if you live more intentionally, if you consciously choose to come from one of these, choose to come from the role of a creator, that will make the biggest difference in your life. I have here the magic formula for creating anything you want, as promised. And some of you might be thinking, sounds too good to be true. And I would urge you to reconsider. This is something not complicated, and you've probably heard of it before, and yet it's a thing that most people don't do. The magic formula is get committed. One of my mentors has a beautiful quote where he says, failure to commit is the high cost of low living. I want you to think about the difference between being interested. Trevor, if you're there, could you unmute yourself and share with us in a few seconds or so? What's the difference in your mind between being interested in something and being committed?
Interested, you just sort of have some sort of, I guess, you want to be able to do it, but when you're committed, you dedicate all your resources to it.
Absolutely, perfectly well said. When we're interested, it comes from this of 1 foot in, 1 foot out. It sounds good, and if it's easy and comfortable, and I'm not too busy at the time, I might consider doing it. And when we're committed, it's I'm doing it. Period. You do what you say you're going to do, even after the mood you were in when you made that commitment. In the same way as it's a promise. It's not, if I promise, it's not I promise if it's comfortable. It's I promise it's happening. And I make this distinction between the language of commitment and the language of hesitation. Hesitation is maybe, I'll try, we'll see, if I'm lucky, hopefully. And notice where you catch yourself using these words and you're not committing. Commitment language is yes, absolutely. You can count on me. I'll find a way. And I want you to imagine, by a show of hands, how many of you are married? Yeah. And I want you to imagine, however long you've been married, at the day of your thank you. Imagine saying some really beautiful things to your partner, and then you follow it up with I do. And your partner looks you in the eyes, looks at the floor, kind of looks a little bit nervous for some reason, looks back up at you and says, yeah, I'll try.
Oh.
And I want you to notice that the reason why so many people shake their heads when they hear that or they laugh is because we know deep down that won't work. We know deep down, like, that's not what this is. Like, that's not what we're signing up for. And in that same way, where could you raise your level of commitment? There's a beautiful story of JFK that a mentor shared with me when he was a kid. And he went to this private school and he would walk to school. And he had this little uniform with a little hat. And him and his friends would walk back to school together. And on the way back, there's a wall. And they'd always try to climb the wall. And no one was able to do it. It was really difficult to climb. And at some point, his friend dared him. I bet you can't climb over that wall. And he was probably 7 or 8 at the time. So I doubt he was thinking in the way that I'm about to say, but the metaphor works really well. He knew, I can't go home without that uniform and mom's going to kill me. So he takes his hat and he throws it over the wall. And from that place, I can't go home without that thing. And so he climbs the wall and he gets to that same part of the wall where he always quits, where he always gives up. This is the part that's the unclimbable part. This is the part that no one can do. But because he has to get over, he sat with it for a little bit and he found a way to get over it, and he did. And in that same way, where are you buying into the story in your own life that it can't be done? Where are you buying into the story that I don't have what it takes? When if you stuck with it a little bit longer, you could figure it out. Yeah, whatever you want, whether it's in your marriage, your business, finances, if you raised your level of commitment, if you reoriented every area of your life in alignment with that goal, you would get there. I can't tell you how long it will take, but you'll get there. And so these are the 2 biggest fears that I have found that hold us back. First is the fear of rejection. By a show of hands, if you can just be honest, how many of you at any point in your life have been afraid of rejection? Perfect. I appreciate the 2 hands. Thank you. When we think about this, I want you to notice that practically everyone experience of being human.
Breaking up.
And so if you notice, you're not alone. We've all experienced the fear of rejection. So I want you to ask yourself, rhetorically, what is rejection? And as you sit with that for a moment, you might think, oh, it's something somebody else does to me. They said no, or they walked away, and we tell ourselves that's what it is. But the truth of the matter is that rejection isn't real in the same way that, let's say, a tree is real. Rejection is a concept. Rejection is the story that you make up about what my no means. And this is amazing news. And the reason is because if it's just a story, then you can tell yourself a new story. You can't be rejected if you don't reject yourself, because the truth of the matter is you make a request and people are free to say yes and they're free to say no. We're equal. You might have a preference, you want the yes, but yes, no means no. No doesn't mean you're not good enough, people hate you, you're not gonna make it. These are stories that we tell ourselves that hold us back and they stop us. But when you realize no just means no, no means in this moment that person's not interested. In this moment, I'm going to go find somebody else to talk to. And when we recognize that, rejection loses its power. Second fear is the fear of failure. Like rejection, failure is a concept. Failure doesn't exist. There is no failure. There's feedback. You did something and you got a certain result. End of story. Like that's all that's actually happening. And if the result that you got wasn't what you wanted, what would you choose to make? You can either learn from it and say, how can I get better next time? That's kind of looking at themselves in the. Or you might think, maybe I'm not cut out for this. Maybe it's not meant to be. Maybe I should just quit while I'm ahead. And you tell yourself these stories where failure and rejection, you're giving the power to it with your words, with your language, as we said before. Failure comes from comparing ourselves with other people. It's a result of the should trap. I should have what they have. I should know more than I do now. I should be further ahead. You should be exactly where you're at right now. And the proof, you're here. If you weren't here, then if I say it's raining right now, it shouldn't be raining. But what's the reality? It right now is exactly where you're supposed to be. And now the question is, if you don't like it, if you want more, what would you like to do about it? Because the truth is, you only fail when you say you failed. Otherwise, it's a stepping stone to success. It's a learning experience. And here's an exercise that you can take with you after today. You can play the no game. And what I mean by that is you can eliminate the fear of no by actively pursuing it. Because notice that the rejection and failure fears, they're not real outside of our heads. So if you think, how many yeses would I like to get? And then I'm going to explain this as an example here. Let's say you were to say, I'm a real estate, let's say, agent. And how many houses would I like to, how many years? And then I want, let's say 5. I'm going to a no goal at maybe, or 12. And if that's my goal, and every time I hear no, I actually celebrate it because I'm one step closer to my goal. The interesting thing there is that rather than getting discouraged every time you hear no, you get excited and playful and bold, and you start being more confident in your delivery, which actually increases the likelihood you're going to get to a yes, because assuming you know what you're doing, assuming you have something good to sell, assuming you're good at what you do, why are you getting a no? It's either because how you're showing up and who you're being and how you're getting in your own way, your fear. No going no, it makes it a lot more fun, and you'll find that you'll get far more yeses. Because using that real estate agent example, if she wants 5 yeses, but her no goal is 12, if she gets 3 yeses off the get-go, that's awesome, but she still needs 12 no's. And so she's got more and more people. And so at the end of the day, she'll probably get 8 or 9. And so this is a way of using no to your advantage. I have here the inside out nature of reality. These are 3 steps that I have found to be the case in life. Number 1 is life happens, whatever the circumstances. Number 2, we interpret it. And number 3, we experience our interpretation. This is life right here. This is all that's ever happening. And this is why we never experience life as it is. We experience life as we are. And from a psychological perspective, the event, whatever happened, that's never the issue. The issue is your interpretation, your story, the meaning that you give it. That's what creates your experience. And that brings us back to the creator mentality we talked about before. And the great news, where does the interpretation come from? Where does the meaning come from? It comes from you. And that's why the power always lies with you. By a show of hands, how many of you here have kids? Perfect, yeah. I want you to imagine, I'm not sure how old they are, let's imagine you have a daughter, and then let's say 6, and they come running into your room. Daddy, daddy, mommy, they're in my room. And this has happened several times. And you've, in the past, just said, there's no monster, there's nothing there. And you know that doesn't work. And they're very unsettled, coming back and saying, show me the monster. You're walking out of the room, your eyes are closed, and you walk in this massive shadow demon thing on the wall, and you go, Jesus. And you're thinking, how is that? And your logical brain kicks in and you go, well, I know there's really not a monster. Like, what is that? And you look around trying to find the and you see the teddy bear seated in front of the nightlight. And you instantly know, oh, I get it. And still terrified. So you can say, go back to bed, but that's not going to work because your child's interpretation is still very different from yours. And so you then maybe walk your child over to the wall and you say, look at Teddy, and like grab his hand and move him and look at the wall. And now the shadow starts waving and the monster's waving, and maybe your kid starts laughing. And in that moment, maybe the kid moves the bear and the shadow goes away completely. And now the kid knows there was never a monster in the first place. And for space, the question, what do we do about it? Because there is no monster and there never was. It only exists in your kid's head. But our life, we make up monsters in areas of our life and our interpretation. So whenever you're experiencing something that you don't like, ask yourself, how am I creating this? What am I focusing on that's creating interpretation? And what if I shifted that? What if I asked a different question? That will change your entire experience of life. And I know just for the sake of time, I'm going to just move forward here. There are 2 ways that I found you can create the future. You can create the future either from the past or you can create it from the future. And if you create the future from the past, which is what most people do, you're coming from the space of, well, this is what my past has been like. I'm good at and I'm bad at. And given the failures that I've had, that's probably what the future is going to be like. And what ends up happening is you act the same way as you've been acting. You show this version of you, and your tomorrow isn't that different than your today. And maybe some of you can relate to that, maybe now, or that's how so many people create their life. But there is an alternative, and that's creating your future from the future. And when you create your future from the future, what you're doing is you're looking out into the future and you're saying, what kind of man, what kind of woman, what kind of leader, what kind of friend, and all these different roles would I love to be? And you visualize it. You see, how would that version of me handle this situation? How would that version of me talk to people? How would that version of me show up when he or she's afraid? Like in spite of fear, what would they still do? And when you look at life through that lens and you go, okay, wow. Then you come back to this moment, recognizing that like a great chef or something, you've got the recipe. You know how to do it. So now it's a matter of choose to do it. Actually step into that version of you now and be it now. Because the truth of the matter, I said earlier, who are you? And I said, you are this moment. You are pure possibility. Why? Because the past and the future don't exist. They're concepts. The past exists in your memory only. The future exists in your imagination only. This moment right now is all you have. And if you can get clear mentally in your imagination, what's that future's more successful version of me in any of those areas of life, and then come back and be him or her now, your future is decided by what you do right now. And so you're instantly creating your future from the future, and life will have to be different because the input changes. When the input changes, the output has to change. But if you keep living from the past, if you keep showing up as the same old you, living the same old way, nothing will change. And that's what creates our frustration. And as we kind of wrap up here, I have a short story that I want to share with you. And this is a story that's very personal to me. And I mentioned this is an aspect of the wake-up call that maybe you didn't know you needed. And I ask you to listen to this story from the filter, from the lens of how this could apply to your life right now. So when I was 19 years old, I was a sophomore in undergraduate in college in Fordham University in the Bronx. And my father had a brain aneurysm and he was 49 years old. And if anyone doesn't know what that is, imagine a blood vessel in the brain like a tube, and it starts to balloon out. And if you're fortunate, you have a really bad headache and you go to the hospital and if you're fortunate, they get it taken care of and you're released and you're okay. My dad wasn't fortunate and his ruptured. And when it ruptured, his life was immediately in danger. And the neurosurgeon said it was the worst aneurysm he'd ever seen. It was a 4-hour brain surgery and the chances of survival were less than 5%. And in those 4 hours, you can imagine time went real slow. And my whole life got turned in an instant. And I walked into the room after the surgery. He had survived. It was already, a miracle. And he was in a coma, and we were told that he's probably never going to wake up and that he could die at any moment. And here was this person, my dad, the epitome of what it meant to me to be a man. And he's in the most vulnerable position I've ever seen a human being. And in that space, I had felt extreme regret because I felt like I took my dad for granted. I felt like I messed up. I felt like I wasn't going to have the opportunity to get to know this man to the degree that I would have liked to. And in that moment, I never wanted anyone to feel that ever again. And fast forward 3 years, he survived three years before he did pass away. And in those 3 years, we helped him make almost a full recovery. And it was absolutely incredible. I took several years off after college to be one of his primary caregivers. And if anyone has had that experience, it's extremely taxing mentally, physically, emotionally. It taxes you in every way possible when you've got somebody that needs you every second of the day for everything. And I had some of my highest highs and my lowest lows. And I also had, my prayers answered. I got to spend 10, 15 hours a day with my dad. And I got to really get to know him. And he became one of my best friends. And in those 3 years, my experience of life just shifted. I started to learn lessons that intellectually I'd heard before and I knew, but I finally had a felt embodied experience of the miracle of this moment, the miracle of the fact that you woke up today. Every day, 150,000 people don't wake up. The fact that you're here listening, you weren't one of them. And if there are people in your life that you really care about and they happen to wake up too, wow, like you hit the lotto 100 times over. And yet so many of us, because we live unconsciously, we come from this space that something extraordinary has to happen in order for me to feel happy, to feel at peace, to feel grateful. When in reality, you have everything you need already to feel what it is that you want. And in those 3 years, there were moments where my dad forgot who I was because he had short-term memory loss, he had seizures, and there was many moments where he almost passed away. But that love and zest for life to wake up and go, I'm here, mom's here, dad's here, my sister's here. It's a great day. And I might not have tomorrow. And so I'd like you to look at your own life. Who do you have in your life right now, regardless of age? I strongly implore you, many of you have probably had this experience, but don't make the mistake of thinking just because someone's young that they're going to be around. 2 of my cousins, one was 20 and one was 21. Both of them passed away in the 3-year time span that I was taking care of my dad. And both were completely they caught us off guard and were very sudden. And the impact that had on those families was immense. And the Dalai Lama's got this quote, most people live as if they're never going to die, and then they die having never really lived. Something Julie mentioned that I mentioned earlier, the primary aspect of the work that I do with people is help you create an extraordinary life without regret, a life on your terms, so that every single day at night, when your head hits that pillow, if you found out you weren't going to wake up tomorrow, could you be at peace with that? Could you sit with that and say, I lived life, the way that I wanted to, the people that I love, know that I love them. And I expressed that love every day. My life was an example of what I stand for. And let's say my 3 words that I've selected earlier today, I've lived those. People will say that at my wake, at my funeral. And if the answer is no, I strongly encourage you to do something about that. That experience with my dad after he passed, over 7,000 people came to his wake. I shook every single person's hand. And in 5 hours, almost everyone said, your dad saved my life. My dad was a primary care physician. And to see so many people from every different walk of life, every culture, every color, every religion showing up as an example of how much love he had for his patients and for his friends and his community. And I had instantly recognized I had been playing small, that I was afraid of rejection. I was afraid of failure, that I cared way too much about what other people thought about me. And because of that, I was robbing the world of my light. I was wearing the mask that I talked about earlier so I could fit in. And in that moment, I recognized, screw that. It's not worth it. Like, the age I am right now is the age that my cousin just passed away at. I might not live tomorrow. Why am I pretending to not be me right now? And that was my light bulb moment. That was my aha moment. That was my never again moment. And life has been completely different these last 10 years. And I strongly encourage you, where could you step more into you? Where could you really be the truest expression of you? And where could you take the people that are in your life that you have right now that you love dearly and help them feel that? I have this whiteboard here that when I was in med school, I had it at the foot of my bed. And it wasn't this cool and big, but it had these 3 quotes on it. And every day I looked at it, and these 3 quotes just kind of guided me through my days. And I want to share them with you. Number 1, do something today your future self will thank you for. Ask yourself, what could I do today that my future self, a year from now, 3 years from now, will look back and go, that right there, that's what started it all. That's what made the biggest difference in my life. That's why I got the results that I got. Number 2 is be the reason someone smiles today. Life and business are people games. If you make people happy, if you put smiles on their face, if they love to be around you, you'll have all the business you ever want, and you'll have all the friends that you'll ever want. Number 3 is, what would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? Live that way. Because if you don't ask, the answer is always no. Don't shoot yourself in the foot before the race starts. Don't say no to you. Like, give someone else a chance to say no, because they might say yes. I have here the definition of hell as we wrap up. And this definition, when I first heard it, sent shivers throughout my spine. And it basically is, on your last day on this earth, the person that you became comes face to face with the person you could have been. And I want you to imagine in this picture, imagine that shadow is like Arnold Schwarzenegger, Mr. Olympia, like 7-time or however many times he won. And that's him in our universe. Now imagine this person on the left here. That's Arnold in some parallel reality where he listened to his mom who talked him out of it, and he became like a banker or something. And notice that his face is in his hand going, I never chased my dream. I gave up. I played small because other people told me I couldn't do it or I shouldn't do it. Whatever it is you want to do it. And some questions to consider. Feel free to take a picture of this. What's something you've been putting off that you know will improve the quality of your life once you do it? What are you struggling with that if you solved would dramatically improve your level of happiness and success? What goals and dreams would you like support accomplishing faster and more efficiently? And what's the first step you could take today to begin creating your desired future? So many people are they're on the fence, they're on the sidelines, they're in the stands. Get into the game. Your life is so important, and you've got a mission here, and you've got contributions to make, but you can't do it if you're playing small. And so if some additional support that I could offer you as we wrap up here, if you like videos, podcasts, content, I've got probably like 500-600 pieces of content on all these different channels here, and I'll put it in the link in the chat as well. And I have a book that I wrote, made it short, practical. You can get a free copy of it on my website in the link below. It's called 20 Steps to Your Next Breakthrough. And the whole purpose of the book was, how could I create something that helps somebody who feels stuck and unmotivated to get into momentum? And how could I make it where there's no excuse not to read it? So I made it like 75 pages or so. Each chapter is 1 to 3 pages. You can knock it out really quickly. And there's an audiobook version for a couple bucks too, if that's something you're interested in. And as I said before, if you'd like to speak, if this has resonated with you, if you'd like support solving a problem, solving a challenge, or creating a goal or dream, I'd love to have a conversation with you on the call. Basically 3 aspects of the call. We find out what it is you really want. We discover what's getting in your way, and we create a plan to move you forward. And if it feels like a good fit, we move forward together. And if it doesn't, and you'd like to do it on your own, or maybe I could point you in the direction of somebody else, I'd be more than happy to do that, and we part as friends. And so this is the starting line of the rest of your life. And I have here one day or day one.
Mm.
You can have anything that you want. You just have to actually want it enough to do something about it. Because the price for living your new life is giving up your old one. Nothing changes if nothing changes. I make this distinction between the default future and the created future. The default future is if you keep living the way you've been living and you do nothing different. Life either stays the same or it gets worse. But the created future is you make a new decision now. You shift. You create your future from your future and you make decisions that are in alignment with what that version of you would do. And if you do that now, your entire life will be different. I promise you that who you were at the start of this presentation isn't who you are now. And if there are aspects of who you were then that you don't want to continue being, figure out what you want, get the help and guidance that you need to get where you want to be faster, whether that's me or somebody else, and keep taking action, keep course correcting, keep getting yourself on path, because remember, again, your life changes when you do. You're far more powerful than you know, and you're exactly where you're supposed to be as you receive this message. Please allow me to be the first to welcome you into this exciting next chapter of your life. The rest of your life starts now. Please make it count.